Okay, I'm here in my dirty car and I'm about to go to book club where we're going to discuss The God of the Woods by Liz Moore, I think. I'm meeting in town, which is like 40-minute drive. And we're going to meet at a restaurant. We don't normally do that. We usually meet at somebody's home. But I'll be back and I'll tell you what everybody thought. I've already told you that I think it was fine. But I may gain some really profound and interesting insights by being in book club. So I'll share that with you when I get back. I went to book club a couple of days ago and we discussed The God of the Woods by Liz Moore, which was on everybody's must-read list when I was watching BookTuber earlier and the latter part of the year. And I was hoping that I might gain some insights to something that I missed, and maybe because for me, this book, it was fine. I enjoyed the process of reading it. Did I think it was spectacular? No. And I do struggle with the star ratings that everybody uses. I saw a booktuber, I think her name's Book Mama, and maybe a year ago she did where she put all her historical fiction books that she's ever read in a ratings thing. I see this a lot, some computer thing where you put your rating in and then you put your little book faces in. Anyway, I really loved her system. I think her name is Angie Henderson. I liked the way she did it. Her top rating was Can't Stop Thinking About It. Her next one was I loved it. Her third one was I liked it. And then her fourth one was it could have been better. And then her last one was I didn't finish. And so I really like that. And that kind of feels more like how I would talk about books instead of stars. And so at book club, we did discuss this. And initially, it was getting like 4 stars around the room. And then I told them about Book Mama's rating system. And they all liked that better too. And then when I did that, they all said, it could have been better. So we all sort of felt the same way. I will say I liked a lot of the characters in here. I didn't love or feel like maybe some of the relationships felt real. It was an enjoyable read. It could have been better, is how I would sit that. So I'm not going to say any more about it because I don't want to drone on and on and on. So the other books that I read this week, I think last week I had just started this one, Small Things Like These. And this is, it's a book because it's, a book, but it's 116 pages. So you can read it in an evening. I really, really liked this book. And I would say I can't stop thinking about it. It gave me some knowledge about a situation in Ireland that I wasn't aware of. And the bigger impact of it, of course that's impactful. We should, to call attention to atrocities and things that go on so long for for a vulnerable population. So that's super important. But the bigger impact I think it has is that it shows us humans the impact that we can have on one another by not doing something or by doing something. And both are reflected in this short little story. I really can't stop thinking about it. So while it wasn't a warm fuzzy kind of thing, I loved the character and the main character and can't stop thinking about it. So need a quick read. This was fantastic. Yeah, it's the top of the tier for me. Totally recommend it. And I will go seek out her other books too. Okay, what else did I read this week? So after those two, I decided to go into, so the reason I named my channel The Book Collector is because I buy a lot of books and I collect them. doesn't mean I've read them. I have a lot of books, so I'm trying now to make sure that in addition to my new, ooh, I can't wait to read it, that I dip into my stash and read those. So I pulled out, I have maybe over 20 John Grisham books. Only a handful have I read. So Sycamore Row. This apparently, and I didn't know this, even though I've had the book a long time, is a part of a series, and the first one being A Time to Kill, which I loved, but I read it 1992, something like that. I don't know, long time ago. So I have a on again, off again thing with Grisham, where I read tons of his books in the early 90s, and then they kind of were blending together. So I stopped, and I got married and started having kids and stuff. So, you know, I was reading Chicka Chicka Boom Boom and The Giving Tree, and things like that. And not knocking those, but it's just a different kind of read, right? So as my kids got older, I then went to the library and I got some of them to try, the ones that I hadn't. So I read a bunch, 2007-ish, in that time. Okay, so I really haven't read much. I picked up Rooster Bar. I loved it. I'll talk about that another time. But anyway, back to this. So I pulled this out. It's one that I've been collecting, and I loved this book. I loved it. Oh, this was my first audiobook too. So our library has finally, and I don't know when it happened. It could have happened in the last 10 years. Has audiobooks that you can check out. It's got the Libby app, and so this was my very first audiobook. What happened though was it got me started, maybe the first bit, and then I just picked up the book because I can read faster. And 24 hours later, I was done. It was fantastic. It was fantastic. I loved it. I loved it so much that I looked up what the next one in this series is, and I ordered it. So yeah, this was really good. So because I enjoyed this so much, and if you saw the movie, A Time to Kill, you've got Matthew McConaughey, you've got Ashley Judd in your head, you've got, I think it's Donald Sutherland who plays the Lucian, whatever his name was. That's good or bad, but I have seen all of the movies that were adapted from Grisham books, and they're great adaptations. So I loved them. And maybe that could take away for some readers, or it can enrich it for other readers. I loved this book. Yay for Sycamore Row. Totally recommend it if you liked A Time to Kill. So in book club in January, we read a Grisham book, Biloxi Boys. It was okay. What I'm finding, because my next book that I read was The Whistler, I'm finding that I do not enjoy Grisham books where it's like organized crime. And maybe, like if you do, this is a good book for you. Biloxi Boys is a good book for you. I liked Biloxi Boys better than The Whistler. Okay, so I also did this one fully on audiobook. Maybe 3 chapters I read from my hard copy that I owned. I had already owned it, so I pulled from my stash. I didn't like the narrator for this one. Loved the narrator for this one. And I don't know if that makes a difference. I'm not experienced enough in audiobooks. But hey, if you're like me, and maybe you don't do audiobooks, and you never have, I would suggest try it. Especially if you're in a big city where you have lots of options. I put some of the newer books that I want to read, it's going to be months before I can get it on audiobook from our library, because we're small and we're in a kind of what's deemed a rural county. So not super great. But hey, BookTubers out there told me some little tricks and tips and how to do things. I feel my age, but great tips and tricks. And if you are like me and haven't done audiobooks, try it. I didn't love this one on audio, even though I powered through it. the woman who did it, all her men sounded like James Cagney. I just, it was weird. And I do speed it up. To be fair, the woman's probably a lovely human, but most of the characters, the lead character is a woman, but most of the characters are men. And I don't know, maybe there was too many. I'm not for the big crime syndicate. I think more interest, so this may or may not be a spoiler, so I'm gonna wait a minute. They touch on a incarcerated guy who's in prison for a murder he didn't commit, and the syndicate kind of set it all up that he would go to jail for it. I think that storyline would have been way more interesting. How it happened, why it happened, how they got him out, how he got convicted, and it was sort of a, really under the radar subplot. That would have been more interesting to me than the crime syndicate. Anyway, I finished it, and and it's from my collection, so that's good. So the book I have just started, and I'll update you next week on, was from my little haul, This Other Eden. So this is one, I did start reading the actual copy. I got to page 51, and then I thought, I wonder if I can get more engaged if I do an audiobook. So I just started listening to it. Ooh, this narrator is really good, and I think has the right voice for what if the voice and the tenor and tone don't match what I think is needed for the story, then I get a little turned off. I am hard to please. Hear me now. I'm easily amused, but I'm hard to please. So, yeah. So the rating on this, the rating according to Book Mama, this one could have been better. Sycamore Row I loved it. So yeah, I'm all over the board today, right? And we'll see next week what this one is. But this is fun. And I had a nice comment from another booktuber, really sweet lady. I think she's in Canada. And man, I really appreciate that. So, I hope this is helping somebody like me out there. And until next week, see you later.